Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Double Feature podcast. Once again, starring myself and Danny.
Starring Mr. L as a jet-lagged, ill podcaster, and featuring Dan, Clack of the Geek, DCS Media, as a pre-show week co-podcaster. I don't know. I literally, as this podcast will go out next week, I will be literally doing a show all day. So yeah. That'll be...
Yeah, so very different here. You're preparing for a show, and I've just got back from a holiday in Florida, and I've got some jet lag and some bug
jet lagging
off of the plane. Jet lagging will be jet lagging. Awful. Jet lag be lagging. But we're back, and it's the October episode now, so we've got couple of spooky things to throw in. It's spooky season. We got everything. We got scary movies. We got demons. We got clowns. We got everything.
We got Bruce Willis.
So, Bruce Willis.
Sorry, I'm really out of it for some reason. I don't know why, but obviously the main attraction of this week is we're going to be covering Joker 2 or Joker Folie, Deux, or however you say it. I don't know. Very.
Folie,
yeah, well, I don't care. It's a very interesting response, and we'll obviously get into that when we get to the kind of spotlight part of the podcast. But first of all, I guess we'll talk about. Actually, no, hold on. So, how was your holiday in Florida?
Oh yeah, it was really good. So I went to Florida on the 1st of October and came back yesterday on the 17th. We went to Universal Studios a lot. I'm once again an annual pass holder there. And we went for Halloween Horror Nights, which is a very high-budget Halloween experience where there are 10 different haunted houses to go through, some of which are backed by IP.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to go there one day. I would love to do that.
It is really cool. It's really cool. So this year's IP, they had a house based on the new Ghostbusters movie, Frozen Empire, which was really good. They had a house based on the first two A Quiet Place films.
That's cool.
And the scariest house I've ever done in my 3 years of this, by far, is the house based on the Insidious franchise. Genuinely terrifying. Like every time I went through that, there were more and more people coming from different places. Some of the tricks they used in there were just, it was absolutely, it was so scary in there. And it was a good length house as well. It was like a 5-minute walkthrough of just non-stop barrage of jump scares.
I love that. I love those haunted house things. I'd love to kind of properly do them, because I think you've mentioned you've done been an actor, a scare actor before, haven't you? We've both done that, haven't we?
I swear,
because I know I've done, because my old school, when I was at school, we used to do scare, the drama, we used to do scare mazes Halloween, and we'd get the drama students as actors. And I remember one year, it's I had dressed as this Pennywise style clown with a top hat, and it's always really fun. It's always really fun to do that, I find. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I applied for something like that once, but I didn't get in. But it's a really fun experience on Horror Nights. It's very immersive houses. I mean, there are scare zones around the park you can walk through. I've got a vlog I'm working on that's going to come out pretty soon. It's going to have footage of all 5 of those scare zones in. But yeah, another one I'm going to get onto later, I think, is there was a really good house based on kind of classic drive-in B-movie horrors, which... It was a really fun house. I might discuss that later on when it fits the topic. But so I think first of all we're going to get on to the current news and films of the past month or so. Now we're going to cover current news in films, cinema, etc. So where do we want to start off with with this part then?
So I think we should start, because I know we've both seen this since, and we briefly mentioned it last podcast, but it's the new Tim Burton film, Beetlejuice. We can't say it a third time because we'll get cursed. But yeah, I think both. I went to see it. I went to go and see it, and I think you did as well. And I think I really loved it. I really did.
Yeah, I went to see it at the cinema. I watched it pretty close after watching the first one at home for the first time, and it was quite a fun movie. It was I think it was better than the first one in my opinion. I think I think there's just kind of more to it. I think there's a problem with these films. Is I feel like these two films don't have enough of Beetlejuice in it. I feel like he's never quite there enough. But I think with this film, there was a lot of really fun ideas. But I think by the end there were almost too many plot points all trying to get tied together that the ending felt a bit rushed. But I think it was a really fun film, and there was a lot to love about it. I think I liked more of the stuff that was kind of in the afterlife when you had like Beetlejuice, you had Willem Dafoe running around.
Yeah, I love the Willem Dafoe character. I loved him.
Beetlejuice's ex running around. I think Danny DeVito in it, which I was not expecting.
That was just my letterbox review. It was like the Danny DeVito scene was epic. Yeah.
But I think all the stuff going on in the afterlife is where it kind of had its strengths, and I think when it kind of lets Tim Burton play around more with those kind of effects that were very present in the first film as well, and it's kind of more wacky and zany kind of stuff. I think that's where the film's at its strongest, is when it's exploring like these different mediums as well. As like I really love like the effects in these movies.
Yeah, and the fact that they obviously, you know, it could have been so easy to just like do it in CGI nowadays, but I love the fact that, like, the sandworm is stop motion and all the stop motion effects and the puppets and the, you know, makeup and practical effects. It's absolutely brilliant. And to me, it kind of feels like a movie very much from like the 80s and 90s, but just with modern tech and effects and budget, and it just feels like a bit of a throwback. And I grant you, I think you made a good point. Yes, it is very chaotic with so many different plot points and whatnot, but I kind of enjoyed the chaotic nature of it. I think when they all, you know, converge in the church and like all these characters are here, and then everybody slowly goes, and then you're just left with like Lydia and her daughter Astrid, you know, Jenna Ortega. I think that contrast of like all this chaos and then you get a very intimate moment, I really love that as like a resolution to the story. I really enjoyed that, and I think I'd say it's on par with the first one. The first one's obviously a classic that I remember quite fondly from when I was younger. I got to see it in the cinema like back, you know, a good few years ago now. For like I was on Halloween night. It was like an anniversary screening of it, and it's always hold a special place for me. But yeah, Beetlejuice is for me one of the strongest films of this year. It's just a really fun time, and it has the spirit of the original. It's chaotic. It is a bit messy in the script department, but I love how creative and inventive it is. The Soul Train, that was really fun as well. Yeah, it's really creative, and it does feel like the first Tim Burton movie in a long time now that really kind of feels like it feels very Tim Burton. It doesn't feel like a sloppy remake or very studio corporate. It feels very much him, but just not quite peak Tim Burton. But it's still very good. I really enjoyed it. Like, I give it like 8 out of 10 probably, something like that.
I think it's good to have a rare legacy sequel that's actually quite good and isn't just kind of a cash grab.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's like so many of them are like that, and like Beetlejuice, because I've wanted a sequel to this, because as I say, it's a film that I, you know, really was fond of. Like, even like Top Gun Maverick, you know, as great as that is, it wasn't one that I was asking for, because I didn't grow up on Top Gun, but I grew up with Beetlejuice, and I was like really looking forward to this one, so I was like, please don't disappoint. And for me, it genuinely didn't, which I was surprised by, you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's really good that they managed to make a sequel that people actually enjoyed, and it's really sparked kind of like a renewal of the brand. Like when I was at Florida, there was so many more people wearing like Beetlejuice stuff. I mean, obviously at Halloween Horror Nights, but also just out in public, just at random places, there was more people wearing Beetlejuice stuff.
That's
and it was
really
like,
cool,
oh,
yeah.
The Denny's I went to had a Beetlejuice menu.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I had the Beetlejuicy burger.
I wanna have one of them. I wanna have one of them.
It was really nice. It was a triple quarter pounder with provolone cheese. Really good. First meal I had there.
John Travolta would like one of them.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really cool. Like the yeah, and to be fair, the film's doing like really well, like box office wise as well. Like
it did really well at the box office.
But yeah, and I think that's all we have to say about Beetlejuice. But I'm really annoyed that this was not one of the spotlight movies, because this would have been really great to do, because we both really loved it, and like it's doing really well. Like this would have been perfect.
If only we both saw it sooner, we could have done it for last month's episode.
But no, I had to watch that crap Alien Romulus, didn't I?
Nah, it was fun. But all right, so the next one was so I'm going to cut into a different movie, because I went to watch 2 movies on the same day that I watched Beetlejuice 2. So Beetlejuice 2 was the first movie I watched.
Okay.
Then afterwards I watched Speak No Evil.
That's the James McAvoy one, isn't it?
The James McAvoy one. It's a remake of a Danish movie from 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
It was a really good film. So it's about a couple who are on holiday and they meet another couple who then invite them over to their place I think the West Country, and the longer that this couple stays at their place, the more kind of really crazy they realize that the couple that invite them are, and they keep like trying to get away, but James McAvoy keeps finding a way to make them stay longer, and until eventually they realize what's going on, which I won't spoil. This bit's going to be spoiler free, but I think it's a really good kind of like gradual build thriller up until like it kind of reaches its big kind of like climax moment. It's really good. The story of this one does differentiate slightly from the Danish version.
Yeah.
The ending's a little different, but I think that the change they made is perfectly fine with this one as well. But I think it was a really good movie. McAvoy is a really convincing like psychopath. Like he does crazy well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he was in Split. So
I was going to mention, he did Split.
He's got things in that kind of realm.
Yeah.
But so he's got this really kind of good like ominous presence with the way he is.
He's a great actor, and like from what I've seen from like trailers and stuff that I have seen of it, that does seem to be like a bit of a selling point because there's a lot. He does bring a lot of nuance and a lot of like kind of an eeriness to the performance, and from what I've seen from like trailers and whatnot. So I think that's a big like selling point for that film.
I think the best way to describe his characters really is like that kind of like they're so friendly it's almost disturbing kind of vibe.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's kind of what the main thing he's got going for him is. It's really good. I would recommend it.
I would it does interest me that one from what I've seen based on the trailers and whatnot.
Yeah, it was a very solid film. I would check that out when it comes out on like streaming or whatever. Anyway, I heard you also watched a movie you discussed last time, but we discussed the trailer of Megalopolis with that AI review thing. So you've actually watched that film.
So
I did check out
Megalopolis, at the beginning of the month, and my thoughts on it. I've never taken acid before, but I imagine it's something quite similar to that because it was like complete what the flip have I just watched. It was so weird and bizarre, and it does feel like you had to be on drugs to understand it because it was that weird and out there.
Was it
and
good,
I respect it. I would take this over any old like corporate slop. I would take Megalopolis over that. And it's not that it's a poorly made film. Like very great actors and whatnot, great performances, really gorgeous like visuals and production design and whatnot. And to kind of capture like a sort of dystopian sort of near future environment and whatnot. But I was just constantly thinking to myself, who is this made for? Who is this film made for? Because it's like, I respect like having like a unique creative vision, but it's like, it just doesn't connect with anyone. And the funny thing was that when I went to see it, there were two other people in the cinema, this couple, and like partway through, they just walked out. I've never seen that in a theatre before.
So it was just you left.
But that kind of proves my point. It's like, who is this made for? This is the kind of film where it's like, people like more general audiences like kind of don't connect with. So I heard this complaint with like Oppenheimer like last year. It's like, how is a general audience going to connect with it? I think people could because like a lot of people, obviously loads of people saw it, but with that film you have like a universal ideas of like with the Oppenheimer character that Cillian Murphy plays. You can it's a very universal emotions of like guilt and regret and whatnot that you can connect with. With Megalopolis, like you can't. It's presented in such an obtuse way that just there's nothing really that you can emotionally latch onto. It's just weird,
I think it's like, who was it made for? I think the only answer to that is Francis Ford Coppola.
That is true.
I think he's been working on this film for like a ridiculously long time or something, like decades.
Yeah, I think he'd had the idea since like the 70s, like since like the Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, I think it's been like 50 years he's been working on this film, and he's getting on now. So this might be like one of his last films, and so like I think he made it for himself. It was his own passion project.
Yeah, and as I
say, if people enjoy it, they enjoy it, and if not, he probably doesn't care because it's what he wanted to do, and I think you have to respect that in a way.
Fair enough. I mean, but to be fair, the bloke's loaded, so like even if it was a box office bomb, like I don't think he would give it a toss. I respect having that kind of vision, but you're just thinking like, who's this made for? But what I will say, it is not his worst film. All right, Godfather 3 is worse than this. It's not his worst.
Fair enough.
So I can say that much.
The next thing I've got to discuss about is I watched two movies while I was in Florida at Universal's cinema at City Walk. One of them is our Spotlight Joker 2.
Yeah.
The other one was Transformers 1.
Oh, yeah.
So if I remember correctly, you don't really do much with the Transformers movies. You don't know too much about them.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I remember watching Bumblebee, and that was quite fun. But like other than that, I've not really paid attention to the Transformers. I've got a couple of friends though who like kind of quite hyped for this one.
yeah, so Transformers has been going on for a long, long time. It's been like it started in like the '80s and whatever. So like my dad grew up with like the original G1 versions in the '80s and the '86 movie.
Yeah.
I grew up with the Michael Bay movies, which have quite an interesting
You poor soul.
critical response. But
You poor soul. I grew up with the Michael Bay Transformers movies. You poor soul.
no. But I like the first three a lot. Like I really enjoy the Michael Bay films. But 4 and 5 fell off.
Oh.
But this one is. Obviously, a whole new generation of people are going to grow up with this movie, Transformers 1, which acts as kind of like as like an origin story for both Optimus Prime and Megatron. So, I mean, but it's presented in kind of an animated way. This one,
Yeah.
I think this is well, currently it's the highest rated Transformers movie ever on IMDb, like more than the original '86 one. It was a really good film. I think the trailer kind of sets a different tone to how good the film actually was in the end. It has quite a good cast. I mean, it's a little weird having Chris Hemsworth voicing Optimus Prime because obviously the same guy's been voicing Optimus like forever and ever. But yeah, it was a really good film, and I think anyone listening who's a fan of Transformers will enjoy this.
Yeah, it definitely, from what I gather, it definitely seems very like fan orientated, and that's cool. Like, it does definitely give me from what I've seen, it gives me the vibe of the older cartoons from like the '80s and whatnot. So,
yeah,
you know.
It was really good. I really liked the way it kind of explored like Optimus and Megatron as like Orion Pax and D16 starting out as really good friends and kind of like drifting apart as they kind of go on this quest for the old MacGuffin that every movie has nowadays. But I think it was just I think it was really good Transformers film, and I think it's now past its budget because it didn't do well to begin with because they released it in America like a month ago and it's only just come out in England like last week. But I think it's now starting to get more money. Word's getting around about how good it is. I really hope they do a sequel. But yeah, that's my little bit on Transformers. But because I love Transformers, like I love the movies, I love the ride at Universal. But yeah, Transformers 1 definitely one of, if not the best Transformers movie we've seen in a long time. Because the last few Michael Bay ones weren't brilliant.
Like, yeah, that's not exactly a high bar though, is it?
No, but I mean, I really enjoyed the first three, but 4 and 5 just kind of went off. But yeah, so speaking of like sequels, spin-offs, and whatever, we're gonna delve into TV with the next one. You wanted to mention a TV spin-off on what was quite a big DC movie.
I did in a second, but before we go, because you mentioned an animated film, I want to mention just quickly one that is coming out, like has just come out now, and I'm kind of hyped for. It's the new DreamWorks film, The Wild Robot. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah, that's been out in America for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I saw them advertising it while I was over there. Yeah,
That's
I think
really
it was
good word of
DreamWorks
mouth, yeah.
apology for. I think it was DreamWorks apology for Megamind 2.
Deary me. But either way, it looks like it's getting really great reviews. So I just wanted to briefly mention that because it's just come out. So I would love to.
I'm hearing a lot of best DreamWorks movie ever reviews coming in. So it definitely looks like it could be quite high up in the DreamWorks ranking.
If it's even half as good as The Last Wish, I'll be happy. But with the but that was just quickly. I just want to quickly mention that because you're on about Transformers and that animation and whatnot. But with the TV show, a brief pivot to TV quickly. But it's to do with DC, to do with one of Batman's Rogues Gallery. It's the Penguin spin-off, which I'm currently 2 episodes into it. You're 1, aren't you?
Yeah, 1 episode.
Yeah, and I love the Matt Reeves Batman film. Obviously, this is a spin-off of. But the whole Penguin subplot in that film was kind of not the worst part of it, but it was the one that kind of got the least focus because that film was mainly focused on like Batman as a character and obviously the Riddler's plot and whatnot, which I adored that. You know, I think it's one of the best. It's probably the best Batman adaptation of the look, the visuals, and it's just a phenomenal film, and I think it's fantastic. But the Penguin, I'm glad that we got this spin-off because it really helps you appreciate obviously the makeup work on Colin Farrell's performance as the Penguin, or as Oz, as he's kind of referred to as well. And for me as well, as a big fan of these kind of like gangster, mobster sort of stories, so stuff like The Godfather, Goodfellas, The Sopranos to an extent as well. I love that this is kind of in that sort of vibe, and I really enjoyed it. And it's, you know, all these like, you know, family factions trying to kind of outsmart each other, and, you know, I love that kind of tone, and it's very enjoyable and not overly complicated. It's definitely a good gateway if you want to get into that genre, because it is quite similar to those other ones, but they're quite, you know, rich and very complex and whatnot. But I also, yeah, it just really helps you appreciate how amazing Colin Farrell is. You know, he's like weirdly charming, charismatic, but really cunning, and he's a really compelling character, I think. And I've really enjoyed the first episode so far.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm only one episode, but most of the same, really. It's just, I think it's really good, like, that they're doing this spin-off and it's building the one. It's not just like, oh, here's another pointless TV spin-off you didn't ask for. Agatha. But,
yeah, well, who's watching that? No offense.
I am, and it's not great.
I can't be asked with Marvel.
It's not great. It's not great so far. I'm only watching it in case there's something good at the end. But yeah, Penguin is like, okay. I mean, you sure I didn't necessarily ask for a spin-off based on a character. I had about maybe 4 scenes in the Batman, but so far it's really good, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. And I've heard great reviews already from it. I read Empire magazine sometimes when I'm on holiday, and they said it was brilliant. So I'm hearing a lot of big ups about it, and so I'm probably going to watch some more tonight, actually, because I've got some catching up to do.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think it looks really good, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
I'll probably be checking it out soon, because like, I watched it with the first episode with my parents, and we don't tend to watch stuff together, but we watched that because they wanted to watch it as well, because they loved the Batman as well. And we all really enjoyed it, and I loved the bit in the first episode, the 9 to 5 needle drop. That was amazing.
Yeah.
The Penguin, he's got a good taste in music, hasn't he?
Definitely. Now imagine if the Penguin, but it was the Danny DeVito Penguin.
I'd unironically watch that.
I would absolutely watch that. That would be hilarious.
Just have like a 90-minute version of like him at the Oscars with Arnie, taking a piss out of Michael Keaton. Just have a 90-minute version of that. There's your TV pilot.
Oh, brilliant.
But yeah, speaking of DC villains with their own story, on the opposite end of the quality spectrum, Joker, Folie. Let's get onto our spotlight movie now.
Yeah, just wanted to drop a couple more things on part
sorry.
1. First of all, if you like kind of like mobster gangster shows and whatever, season 2 of Stallone's Tulsa King is out now on Paramount Plus, and that's been pretty good so far. Really enjoyed the first season. I'm a couple of episodes into the second season. Really good. Like, Stallone still got it with the acting, and it's really it's really quite a good show.
He's a punk. I'm Sylvester Stallone.
And just add one more piece of cinema news that I heard about recently. So it's just come to light. It's doing the rounds recently. It's come to light that everybody has had a mass Mandela effect, believing that a movie from the 90s existed when it didn't. So apparently, people believe that there was a movie in the 90s starring Sinbad as the genie in this movie called Shazam. And everyone just remembers it. Everyone just remembers this movie. And they remember the poster for it and everything. People in the 90s. And this movie never existed. This movie doesn't exist, and people are remembering this 90s movie.
Hang on, so where's this come from then? This must have come from somewhere.
No one is sure. No one really knows quite where this has come from. But apparently everyone in the 90s remembers as a kid there was this genie movie with Sinbad called Shazam. And there's no record of it. It just the pictures of the posters are online now, but like people have like mocked them up, but the movie itself doesn't exist.
Wait, what?
It's so crazy. We just had like the most massive Mandela effect going on here, and people are only just realizing.
I think we'll have to check Letterboxd after this just to see if it's on there, because it might be. You never know.
Anyway, from one joke to another, we've all now gone to.
That was a brilliant segue. Oh man. Anyways, yeah, from one joke to another. I just killed him.
We will now will now get onto our spotlight. Joker, Folie, Deux, starring Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, the Joker, and Lady Gaga as Lee Quinzel.
And featuring Alan Partridge himself, Steve Coogan, in a cameo.
And Lady Gaga acting well in this was not on my bingo card, but I think the first thing to put on this is that the performances were really good.
Yeah, I think regardless of a bit like sort of Megalopolis we're on about. Like, technically, this film is quite well made. Like, obviously, I should probably say, I'm not mad on the first Joker film, personally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, I loved it, because I didn't watch it when it first came out. I watched it a couple of years after, like, 2022, I think it would have been. So, okay, yeah. I kind of watched it after the hype had died down, and when it came out, it was insane. Like, everybody was going, it's so good, it's so original, it's so clever and unique, and, like, it's going to start violence, which was crap, which is like, what? And it's like, when I got around to it, it's like, I thought it was really great when I first watched it, but I was thinking, it's not quite like this masterpiece that I was led to believe. Sorry. And then over time, it's just a film that I think is very quite middling. I find it, for me, it's very well made, great performances, great music, great production design, great like visuals and whatnot. But the whole story, it's just kind of a copy of a lot of like old Martin Scorsese films, like Taxi Driver, King of Comedy. I mean, obviously Robert De Niro was in the first Joker as Murray and whatnot, and he was in those old, Scorsese films and whatnot. And it's like, to me, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's like, it's like, it's not as smart as it thinks it is, but it is still a well-made film. And even then, I don't really enjoy Joker 2. So.
Right, okay, yeah, so I haven't seen those Scorsese films you mentioned, so...
I haven't seen King of Comedy yet, which I want to, but I have seen Taxi Driver. I think I watched it around the same time as I watched the first Joker, and I think Taxi Driver is just a lot better. I think, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved Joker. I didn't watch it when it first came out. I watched it a little bit later, like a year or two like that. I still caught it before COVID, I think. I watched it before COVID.
Yeah.
So it was still a while ago. And I've watched it more recently, I think 2 years ago. I think it's a really good film. I really like a lot about it. I like the story. I like the acting. I like where it all goes. I like that it's quite different.
Yeah.
The interesting thing here is that obviously for listeners at home, we're going to get into spoiler stuff for Joker 2. We always get into spoilers on the Spotlight stuff, so just you can skip past if you don't want spoilers. But I think what it is that the first movie, everyone kind of like took Joker on as this kind of like anti-hero symbol when that's not really what Todd Phillips wanted. And so his response was making Joker 2 and basically massively doing the opposite of what the audience wanted. So much enough of putting scenes that weren't in the movie in the trailer to give the impression of one thing happening when in reality it didn't. And I think with this movie, what's interesting about it is the whole movie is kind of a joke at the audience's expense, and I love that about it. It's like Harley Quinn here is like a self-insert for the entire audience who loved the Joker side of Arthur Fleck and wanted to see more of the Joker side and didn't really care as much about the person behind it, Arthur Fleck. And I think what it is here is that when they went to the end and he said there was no Joker and it was all him and everything, and that and he kind of just stopped with the whole Joker thing and like Harley left him, is like how the audience obviously don't care about him without Joker there. And I think he made this film with the intention of saying, you're not interpreting this the way I want it, and so here we're gonna do a little subversion. We're gonna do exactly what you don't expect, but the opposite way this time. And I think in a way it's almost genius the way he made this film. But as an audience goer, like you can't help but feel a bit disappointed. But at the same time, I can appreciate what he's doing, and I think it's quite clever. But I also see why he locked himself in his house for the whole weekend when it came out. The
thing is, I think with that there is genuinely something kind of interesting with that idea of like trying to, like kind of, I guess like kind of subverting like the audience expectations in that sort of way. I think there's something there, and I think for me the most interesting part of the film was the whole, Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. I thought she was, to me, the highlight of the film. I think her performance was actually really great, and I was quite surprised because I thought it was just going to be kind of just some crap stunt casting and whatnot. But no, I think she was really good, and also I love the costumes. Like that red costume at the end was like mint. I love that. But also I thought the kind of idea of like this kind of like obsessed fan almost. I
Yeah,
thought, kind of like toxic, like idolizing like a celebrity figure in obviously Joker and
average
whatnot.
Swifty.
I thought there was genuinely something kind of interesting with that, and also the whole how the kind of the response to it. Like, there's obviously the cartoon at the beginning, and like there's this TV movie made about the events of Joker in universe. There's something like kind of idolizing a celebrity in that sort of way. That's a genuinely interesting idea that I thought was kind of touched upon in the film, but just not enough, and I would have liked more of that. And I think Harley
I
Quinn
think
was the
more
best character to
so.
do that through, and I think it was nearly there, but
Yeah,
not quite, and it's like, oh, you were this close,
I think more so as well. It was more about like idolizing the facade of a celebrity rather than caring about
Exactly,
who they
yeah.
are behind. Like when it's celebrities who have like stage names or on-stage personas or whatever, and it's idolizing that rather than
The
idolizing the
person.
person who behind it.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
Which
yeah,
I
exactly.
think is quite
Yeah.
interestingly done here through an actress who uses a stage name quite interestingly. So it's kind of a interesting irony to that. But
True, yeah.
I think there was a lot of good bits in this. I think most of the best stuff for me, I think, was various scenes in the courtroom. I think especially when he's as Joker in the courtroom and he's interrogating Gary Puddles. I think that was one of the best scenes of the movie. There was kind of a lot there between. Then you've got like this like wacky character of the Joker interviewing this like this other person who's just like on like breaking down on the stage because of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there was a lot of interesting contrast between the characters there.
Yeah.
But I think as well, like most of the scenes in the courtroom were quite interesting. Like the point where he gets rid of his lawyer, and like Harley is trying to get him to do more Joker stuff, and then every time he does more Joker stuff, the people in kind of the audience in a way in the court are more excited. It's quite interesting. It all kind of builds on that idea of we want the facade, we don't want the person.
Yeah, I do think it is quite interesting, and like I mean, the way that Joaquin Phoenix obviously plays the character, he's a fantastic actor in this all and whatnot. In both of them, he's fantastic, and yeah, I love the kind of the flick of the switch in that sort of interrogation with Gary. How he goes from very, he puts on all these stupid accents, and then he kind of really lets his rage run away with him. Great performance and whatnot. And as I say, these ideas of like the people want the facade of Joker, they don't actually they don't actually care about the man behind the man behind the mask, quite literally. It's an interesting idea, but it just feels very surface level. It doesn't really feel like it fully explores it, and I wish it did.
Yeah, it feels like the ideas were there, but it didn't quite dig deep enough. And I think part of that is as well. It's almost like I wonder if it's intentional in the way of we know you want us to explore this a little deeper, but we still don't want to give you what you want, so no.
But then I don't really get that, because then what's the point of making it? Like, the whole point of a sequel is like if you have this, obviously the film's exploring the fallout of the first film, and well, it's like explore these ramifications of it more. Like the weird thing is that I thought the overall feeling I felt with this film is that it just felt pointless in a way, in the sense that it feels like hardly anything was achieved. Like, most of the film was just these court hearings. It just felt very. It almost felt like a coda to the first film, weirdly, like a very overly long coda to the first film. It felt like not a lot was achieved, and I feel like, explore the ramifications of the first film. Even if I was saying, I'm not a mad fan of the first film, but at least stick to your guns and go in that direction. Explore what the ramifications are. It just felt really pointless, a lot of what this film was doing.
I mean, overall, it is a pretty pointless movie.
Yeah.
It's all about just building up to a court case that ultimately doesn't matter because the courtroom gets exploded. He ends up back in prison and gets shanked. So, ultimately,
That's the most British way of
there's no
describing
point.
this film. He gets shanked.
That's pretty much what it is, though. He goes to court. He gets done as guilty, so he was going to die anyway. He gets out the courthouse because someone blows it up. He gets caught again because he doesn't run, and then he does anyway because he gets shanked. So it's just the whole movie. It's one of those movies where it's like the events that occurred didn't really go anywhere in the end. Yeah. But I guess it's more about some of the journey of like I think it's more about the journey of Arthur's mind throughout parts of it, and the way he changes, especially once he starts like incorporating music into his life more. That's obviously quite a big point in the film. Is that it is a musical. There's like 16 songs now or whatever.
I think we should maybe talk about the whole jukebox musical angle of this. Now obviously we actually come from a musical kind of background. I mean, I'm this week I will be doing a musical, for God's sake. So we love a good musical. We're not kind of anti-musical like I know some people were, which is obviously that's fine and whatnot. But I was really not. I was genuinely baffled with these musical numbers. Genuinely.
Yeah, I was baffled by a lot of them as well. There was like one or two that I thought were really good and I think were placed quite well. But in the most part, I was like, another song.
I think it's less. I think for me it was like the execution of it. So just for example, the first song is Frank Sinatra's "That's Life" and Brendan Gleeson, who's like the cop character in Arkham. And to be fair, I thought he was a pretty cool character. I wish he could have had a bit more to do as well, but I thought he was kind of cool. But he just starts all of a sudden singing "That's Life," and he'll miss out a couple of the lyrics, and then it goes into like the Sinatra song like with the instrumental playing, and it's like he's forgotten some of the lyrics. It's bizarrely done, right? And not only is the singing just like bizarrely done, but also that's only 50% of it. The other 50% is obviously the choreography, how it's staged, or obviously in the film how it's shot. And some of them are weird, like when Joker's singing. Is it for Once in My Life when he was like in watching the interview back or?
Yeah, he was like watching like part of an interview, and they were talking about like I think they talked about a death sentence. And he started on For Once in My Life.
I think so. And it's like, he's basically the way that the camera just follows him from the back of his head. And it's like the camera just sort of hovers around. And it's like, this isn't like very engaging at all. Like this is so bizarrely staged. And it's like, as like musical nutters like us, we kind of pick up on that. Or I definitely did. It was like, you're shown from his face, because like the whole point of musical is that it's a character expressing emotions beyond words. You get to kind of their true self, and it's like when you're literally being shot from the back of their head, how do you get invested in them? And when the camera just sort of lingers in the courtroom with some of the numbers and whatnot, and it just sort of lingers from like the corner, and it's like it's bizarrely done for me.
I think it is. Sorry,
it's alright.
God. I think it's like it's not like your typical musical or anything. I could tell when watching it was like, there were bits here that's like the key's a little off or like something's a little different. It's not like it doesn't feel as choreographed or anything. I think that's intentional. I think it wants to be rough around the edges. I think there was like obviously like you said with that one it was like a little bit of a weird camera decision just to follow the back of their head, but I think there was like one or two numbers that were done quite well, and I think that was and I quite enjoyed. But I think overall it was a little overboard with how much they were doing.
Like when Arthur at the end is going like stop singing, that was like us for like the whole like first half of the film. It's like shut up.
Yeah, but it was an interesting decision made. But,
and the thing is, I do respect it. I think it's a cool direction that they could have gone in, but I think the whole rough around the edges feel, it's like, it's not necessarily, I think there's a way to do a rough around the edges sort of musical, and like rough around the edges kind of music and whatnot. There's a way to do that, but in this film, it just felt quite amateurly done. It didn't feel like it was committing, and it just felt very amateur and not very confident in itself. It's like, well, if you're not confident in the musical numbers, why are you doing it? Just like, there's plenty of like kind of gritty musicals out there that have a kind of rough nature to them, but the songs still feel polished and it feels competently done. This doesn't. And in fact, in terms of like competency as well, I'd even extend that to some of like the story and the dialogue, the way it just felt it could feel quite ham-fisted and very amateurish in my opinion sometimes.
It's it was certainly an interesting film to watch. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a bad film. I don't think it's as bad as people were saying it was. I don't think it deserves to have like. I think on some rating systems it's like lower than Morbius and lower than Madam Web.
Okay, that's stupid because at least this film is technically quite nicely put together. Unlike those two.
I think there's a lot that's good there, but there's also a lot that's kind of, But I wouldn't say it's a bad film by any means. No, and I think a lot of the audience reaction is literally just people who thought it was going to be him just as the Joker a lot of the way, and it was going to be more in the vein of like the first movie and have more of his kind of facade on, and we'll probably have a bit of like the typical crazy Harley Quinn that you get in all basically every other form of media that Harley Quinn's ever been in.
Yeah.
And the fact they didn't do any of that, I think, upset a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. But then you've got that. I found it interesting because then you've got someone like me who wasn't really mad on the first film, but was kind of interested to see where it would go, and it just didn't seem to go anywhere. And it was just like, so what was the point then? And I think it's definitely got like higher ambitions than say a Morbius or a Madam Web. But I guess because it doesn't fulfill those high ambitions like one bit, it falls really short because of it. But I'd still take this over like Morbius any day, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the part though where he says it's joking time and then he jokes on everybody.
To quote Full Metal Jacket, seems like we got a bit of a Joker here, haven't we? You've got to stop with these bloody Morbius jokes, man. The movie's like nearly 3 years old.
Oh man.
Jesus Christ. But yeah,
that makes me feel old. Jeez.
Well, tough. You know,
3
that's how
years
time
old,
works. We're
man.
nearly halfway through the 2020 decade as it is.
Bro, I feel old. I just got my first grey hair the other day.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm clapping.
I came out the Insidious house at Halloween Horror Nights and I had a grey hair.
Did you actually? Genuinely?
Yeah. We came out and my parents were just like, you got something in your hair. That's a grey hair.
To be fair, I was at this club. Yes, I club now. Yes,
Ooh.
yeah. But I was at the club and like nightclubs and whatnot. And there's a lot of the time you can have like a photographer that comes around, like takes photos and whatnot. And there's one photo of me. I'm not putting it on here because it's embarrassing, right? But it's me like going like way and whatnot. And I don't know if it's how like the lights caught my hair, but it looks like I've got grey hair. And it doesn't even look like me as well. It's just weird. I'll send it you afterwards, but we're not putting this on the podcast because that is just going to tarnish my career.
Fine.
Should we like summarize Joker 2?
Yeah. So just brief summary. I think it's quite a good film. I think it's, in a way, it has a lot of things about it that are really clever. It's not necessarily what the people want, but I think overall I'm giving it like maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. Because I did enjoy it. I think there was a lot there to grasp onto, and it kept my interest and everything. But it definitely wasn't anywhere near the levels of the first movie. However, I think it will still get a few Oscar noms for performance and music and whatever.
Potentially, yeah, I could see that. For me, I'm a little bit harsher. I'll probably rate it a 4. I don't think it's awful. I definitely think there's merit to it. There's great production design, great performances like Lady Gaga and Phoenix. They are really great in the roles. And I do respect the ambition of a lot of what it's trying to do. I just wish it was more confident in what it was doing and just had a point to it, because it just overall feels quite pointless. But what I will say, to end this segment on a somewhat positive note, I at least like the fact that I'm thinking about this film a lot more. Like, I will take this over Alien Romulus, and I know I've slagged it off already, but for me, Romulus felt very uninspired, felt very generic corporate slot. This doesn't feel like that, if I'm being honest, and I will give it that.
Yeah, I think it's quite good to see movies that try and do something different that hasn't really happened much before. It's not like too formulaic.
Yeah.
I will say though, there was one scene at the end that I did want to discuss real quick. It was interesting, the shanking. The shanking scene.
I hated this bit. It was so shit.
It was really interesting. It was a weird choice. It was like, you've gone to the lengths of discovering this character for another 2 hours or so, and you've just killed him off. What I found interesting was something that was going on with this psychopath afterwards, after he killed Arthur, as he sat down. I swear I saw him give himself a Glasgow smile with the knife, and I'm thinking, is this like a hint at him becoming like, is that like, you know how in like Dark Knight Heath Ledger gives himself...
Yeah, Heath Ledger joke,
he says how he got the scars. I'm making that kind of connection. Was the intention the idea that someone else takes on the kind of persona of the Joker afterwards and kind of becomes that character themselves? Because Arthur himself obviously is not fit to be a crime lord or anything.
No, because
But
he's got
it was the
shanked.
idea that's there. Well, yeah, obviously, but I think there was like obviously he got shanked, but I think he was never fit to be a crime lord, and I think the fact that there's that little seed there of the fact that somebody else could become the Joker inspired by the original, I think that's kind of an interesting little bit of food for thought. But that's the last thing I wanted to cover.
I really hope that the cinema has the CCTV footage of my face at that moment, because I genuinely was like, you're not actually doing this movie. You're actually doing this. We're actually we are doing this, are we? It just feels really tacky, really just like it feels just tacky and very cheap, and just like, well, it just again kind of undermines the whole. It's like, what's the point then? It's just it just feels very try hard and desperate there.
It was the most questionable thing about the movie was definitely the choice of ending to kill him off like that.
It was just nah.
That's enough on the Joker. But the turns out the punchline was the audience. But
we were the biggest Jokers of them all.
So, on to part 3 now. It's October, it's spooky month. We're going to discuss some different scary movies. So, we're just going to briefly glance over a couple of movies we've picked out. So, we've got 3 each. So, I'll let you kick this off. You tell me you had some interesting movies in mind here. So,
I got so basically every sort of Halloween season, I try and watch like a few horror movies that I've never seen before. I do obviously rewatch a few. Like I've been going through the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I mean, 40 years old now, the franchise is, but I've been going through those, and it's been really fun because it's one of my favorite horror franchises and whatnot. And I've watched a few and whatnot. But I want to talk about some that I want to talk about some standouts for me that have really stuck with me. So the first one I want to talk about is one I can guarantee not many of you have seen, but it's an Italian-based horror film from 1977 called Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento. And this film, if you're into kind of like American slasher films like Halloween and whatnot, Suspiria is kind of an interesting one because it's part of like the giallo subgenre. It's like an Italian form of like bloody horror, murder, mystery sort of stories and whatnot. It's like a murder mystery kind of thing, very striking visuals, very, elaborate death sequences. And that's almost like the blueprint of the American slasher film. And so I would recommend this film. And yeah, because as I say, I watched it like the other week and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great. And first of all, it's a gorgeous film. I've told Mr. L, I've told you to put some stills from the film. I've sent some stills because it's one of the most gorgeous films that you'll ever see. The lights, the color, the production design, how it's so specifically done, and it's absolutely stunning. And it's got such a great vibe. The music is really effective, and it's just it aims for a really creepy atmosphere. And because at the end it also does verge on like the supernatural with like resurrections and whatnot. I won't go too much into it, but it does delve into like supernatural sort of stuff towards the end. So that vibe really works, and it really is carried by the visuals and the music and the aesthetic and whatnot. But it is still a really engaging story. It's set in like this American dance student comes to this like renowned dance school, and there's like a string of murders. She meets the first victim on the first night, and I won't go too much into it, but it's a really engaging mystery. It makes you feel quite weirdly like sick, and like it makes you feel quite uneasy and quite queasy and whatnot. And because there's one bit where like she's dancing and she's been poisoned, but like you see like the slow, whether it's like the way the music is or the way that the camera keeps moving or the constant movement from the actors, it makes you feel quite disorientated, and it's really effectively done. It's not like scary, but it's really effective, I think.
Okay, sounds interesting. So what year was this one again?
So it's from 1977. I know there's a remake of it from 2018. I think like Tilda Swinton and Dakota Johnson are in it. But yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. But go and check out the 1977 original. And it is, even though it's an Italian-made film, it is dubbed in English, and it can be a little bit off-putting at first. But I think I'd still recommend it. But I think what's interesting as well, even though yes, it is spoken in English, it has still got like a very different vibe from like a typical like Hollywood film. And I think that's really interesting to explore if you are somebody who's interested in global cinema, seeing like the different perspectives of different filmmakers from different countries. So take like traditional Western animation with like Pixar and Disney, and then you go to like Japanese animation with like Studio Ghibli. It's very different styles, a very different approach, and I think it's really interesting. So I would highly recommend Suspiria, especially if you are into like slasher movies. Go check it out. It's great.
Okay, cool. So I've got I'm mixing up my order now here, but I've got a slasher movie. I've just done a last minute sub, because on my birthday in Florida, Hurricane Milton hit.
Oh,
Perfect timing. But
what a lovely surprise!
it was a good day though, because we managed to get out and do stuff up until 2 p.m., 3 p.m. when the parks closed. Everything was empty in the morning. Yeah, parks closed at 2 to 3 p.m. We went back to the hotel room and it started chucking it down. We got tornado warnings, flash flood warnings. So we had to lock in the room for the rest of the night. So I watched 2 movies, which I'm just going to briefly blur into one here. So the Blumhouse movies Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You.
Oh, yeah.
So these were really interesting films. So, in short, slasher movie crossed with Groundhog Day, basically.
I mean, I love Groundhog Day. It is one of my favourite films, but I really want to watch these two. I've always wanted to watch them. I don't know why I've never got around to it yet, but I really want to.
Yeah. Well, I finally got around to them because one of the scare zones at Halloween Horror Nights was a Blumhouse-themed scare zone where all different Blumhouse movie characters were involved in this zone. And one of them was like the killer from Happy Death Day. So I watched Happy Death Day and I watched Happy Death Day 2 both on the same day.
Yeah.
Really interesting movies. The first one's definitely more of your typical slasher horror where you've got this killer and you don't know who it is and they're going around killing this girl every day and she keeps waking up at the start of the day and she has to try and figure out a way to figure out who it is in time and to kind of keep talking to the various people around who obviously forget everything every time she dies.
Yeah.
And then the second movie is a lot less horror. It's a lot more kind of the Groundhog Day aspect of that she's got to figure out a way to stop the quantum effects of the same day over and over, while also at the same time there's a killer there, but also she also has to make sure that nobody else dies and she survives, because obviously then she's stuck in the time where someone else is dead.
Right.
So if anyone else dies, she's like, oh, gotta start over. And so you've got the cycle of her trying to protect herself, but also trying to protect everyone else. The second movie's got that kind of step up in the stakes, which I think makes it as good as the first one, because obviously sometimes, especially with slasher movies, sequels are just kind of more of the same. But I think this one adds a bit more to it, that Happy Death Day to You is just as good as the first one, if not maybe slightly better. So I think these are very interesting films to watch. Definitely would recommend those. Okay, yeah, so what's your next one to carry us on with?
So it's kind of, because you've been obviously talking about Happy Death Day, it's very much, I don't want to say gimmicky, but it's got a very creative concept, like a time loop story with a slasher film with like a time loop.
Yeah, I mean, I would say time loop.
My second film of choice, my second horror film of choice, it's to do with, it's got quite a creative concept, and it is Final Destination, which I finally got around to watching from obviously 2000, the first one. And obviously the concept of this, if you're not aware, is that one of the characters will have a premonition of a disaster. So it's very, in the first one it's like a plane crash and whatnot. And ultimately the premonition ends up being true, but because of that, there's certain characters almost cheat death in a way. They survive that premonition. And so death sets up these elaborate coincidences, in air quotes, to kill them off. And it very much plays on very, these kind of primal fears that we all have of dying in a horrific accident and whatnot. And I wanted to, I was a bit apprehensive to go to it because I've heard not very good things about the sequels and whatnot, and it's from 2000. It's a very cheesy era of horror movies, So I was kind of apprehensive going into it, but it definitely has a very cheesy quality with some of the hokey acting and some of the effect work and some of the kills, like the one where the bus hits the girl. It's a bit cheesy, but I think overall I was still engaged with it, how the story unfolded. And as I said, the best part of it is the concept of, death. These characters cheat death, so they try and, death sets these traps to get them. And so it's sort of, fate isn't sort of messed with and whatnot. I think it's a really great concept. And as I say, plays on these kind of primal fears. The one that always got me, I think you've seen the first Final Destination, haven't you?
I've seen all of them, yeah.
I'm not watching the sequels, I don't care. But with the first one, you know the Todd, you know the guy who dies in the bathroom?
Vaguely remember, this was like 2 years ago, but yeah.
But that was the one that really got me, because it was I always have that kind of paranoia of in those like shower baths where like you're very obviously in a very confined space, and obviously if you're having a shower and the tiles, obviously the bath tiles are slippy and whatnot, so you could slip over, and because of how cramped you are, you're bound to injure yourself. I'm always paranoid of that.
Yeah, same.
So that's why I was really kind of disturbed by that, and it was really horrible.
Yeah, when it's like the shower bath combo thing, yeah. And like you're in the bathtub, and then you might slip.
It really, you could like very easily trip over and slip, and then who knows what else happens. It does play on that really well. I think.
Yeah, definitely. But
and also, I loved the Tony Todd scene. Obviously, he kind of plays death. Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the Final Destination movies are really good. I like all of them. I like the sequels.
Even the fourth one, the 3D one.
The fourth one, I like it, but it's got the cheap 3D effects that just like it makes it a little bit goofy. But overall,
isn't that the one? It's like NASCAR or something.
Yeah, that one. The main thing that they avoid in the first place is a NASCAR crash that goes into the stands. But I
bet who caused that NASCAR crash? Chick Hicks. Dinosaurs are mine.
But yeah, I like all the films. I think the fifth one's probably the weakest one, but I think the fifth one has a good ending. But I think all the sequels, I would say they're all relatively on par. Like, yeah, they get a bit formulaic, but it's still really interesting because like they come up with all these new innovative ways to cheat death. And then they come up with these new innovative ways of death getting back at them, and you think one thing's going to do it, and then it ends up being something else that kills them, or it ends up that that thing doesn't kill the person you think it's going to kill, it kills someone else. But I think it's one that's like, it's always very suspenseful, and yeah, it's a little bit cheesy at times. I mean, and some of the deaths are way too like extravagant and over the top, but I really enjoy them. My favorite one's probably the third one. The third one, the thing that they avoid the accident on is a roller coaster crash.
The roller coaster one. I really wanted to do it in like a Newcastle like roller coaster.
Roller coaster, but
if it was in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Why don't we get a Final Destination movie set in Newcastle? That'd be great.
But yeah, I quite like that one. But I made the mistake of watching that before going on a roller coaster that's famous for crashing.
You know what? I did the exact same thing with the first one, because I watched it. I watched it on a night time, and the next morning I was on a flight to Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like I was only thinking afterwards, like, this is really not a good idea, is it? To be watching this.
It's like watching Lost before taking a flight. It's just like.
Yeah, it's a bit dumb, isn't it?
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed the first one, and more so than I thought I would, to be honest. I thought I'd think it was a bit crap and a bit cheesy, but no, I actually quite liked it.
Yeah, I think they've all got that little bit of cheese to it, but I think they're all pretty good. I think the sequels are worth a shot, to be honest. Like, it's not like a diminishing returns thing. Like, they don't get worse with each one, I'd say. I think they're all pretty par, but so that's that one covered. So
So what's your second film?
So my second one is I've got to talk about the Saw franchise, because that is absolutely my favourite horror franchise. So I've just started my second run through of the series. I watched them all last year, and I've watched the first two movies now this year. Saw is Saw's like, it's Saw. It's kind of its own thing. It's some people say it's like, it's just too much gore and whatever, but I think it's a really interesting concept. So the first movie is probably the main one I'm going to talk about, because it's quite fresh in my head. The first movie is about these two guys who wake up in a really dingy bathroom chained to some pipes, and there's a dead body on the floor in the middle of the room, and a video and a tape recorder, and they basically got the challenge of saying, you've got 6 hours, if you want to get out, one of you has to kill the other. And that kind of sets the tone of how Jigsaw's challenges and work. And they build so much throughout the franchise off of these trials or traps. Or some of them are like trials where it's like one person has to endure multiple different traps that involve other people, which is kind of how like Saw 6 works and Saw 7, where it's one person goes for like a gauntlet. Some of them are just individual tests where one person is in one trap and they have to get out. But I find the Saw films really interesting. I was never really big on gore until I watched the Saw films. The traps are just so innovative, and I just there's something to love in how twisted like the person must be to have created these ideas. But
Yeah, it's.
I think
I always admire like horror films with kind of creative sort of. This sounds really twisted, but like creative like death sequences. I find it quite interesting how you can come up with all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's what's really good about stories. It's really creative and brilliant in a twisted way. The way they come up with all this stuff. I mean, yeah, not all the traps are winners. There's been like over 70 traps across like the 10 movies they've done at this point. They're not all winners, but some of them are really creative. One that I think stands out for me is there's a trap in Saw 6 that's known as Shotgun Carousel. It's exactly what it sounds like. So this guy is on the other side, on like in a room, and on the other side is one of those little playground carousels with like 6 people strapped to it. And what happens is the carousel spins round and then eventually stops someone in front of a shotgun, and the shotgun has 6 rounds, one for each person. And the guy on the other side has the choice to save 2 of them by putting his hand into this machine that basically just stabs a spike through his hand, and it makes the shotgun move so it misses them. So he has to pick the 2 people out of his employees that he wants to survive. There's so much like layers to it of like how do you decide, and then it gets to the point where he's like
layers like an onion.
Layers like an onion, yeah. And then it gets to the point where the last person knows that they're going to die because he's used his 2 saves on other people.
Oh.
Yeah, and like the guy on the other side, he can barely look at him because he knows that this guy's gonna die. And so the guy on the carousel starts screaming at the boss to look at him when he's killing him. And he just kind of accepts his fate. There's a lot of situations in Saw where people know that they're going to die in a trap, whether it's because there's made a choice that's been made, or they failed something that they had to do, or in the case of some traps are rigged depending on who set them. Jigsaw's own traps never are, but quite often his apprentices will set up rigged traps. So you never really know if someone's going to make it, and then even if they succeed in the trap, sometimes you find out that there was no escape. But as well with the Saw movies is there's always like a really good twist at the end of them that tends to catch you off guard. I mean, the twist in the first movie is of like Shyamalan proportions, but I think they're really good movies. I'm always really like intrigued by them. I didn't think I was gonna like them. I watched them purely because there's a roller coaster at Thorpe Park based on the Saw movies, so I was preparing for that because I wanted to like understand the theming. And the ride's really good, by the way. But I end up really loving the movies, and I think they've all got quite an interesting life of their own. I really like the newest movie, Saw 10. It's a lot more of like it's got a lot more of like depth to it. It shifts the perspective with Jigsaw, the Jigsaw killer being the protagonist of the 10th movie. I think there's so much love with the Saw movies. There's so much like. That's unexpected. There's so much creativity. I'm really looking forward to Saw 11 next year.
That's cool. I definitely do. Definitely the original. I definitely want to give it a go because it is kind of one of those like tentpole horror films that like influence like a certain era.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, like how Halloween influenced films of like the late 70s, early 80s. How like Scream influenced like late 90s horror movies.
Yeah.
Saw very much influenced the ones that came out through.
Absolutely,
and they had the focus on like gore and whatnot.
Saw 1 has like I think some of the better acting. It's very low budget, but it doesn't necessarily feel cheap. And the twist in the first movie is probably like the most iconic one in the series. It's really good. So I think the first movie is like very definitely the best one to start with. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite in the franchise. I think like 2 is on par with it. 10's probably my favorite. But if you can get to 10, like they're all a good time.
That's good then. But you mentioned the twist was like a Shyamalan level twist.
Yes, I did. I did that intentionally.
Because my final film that I want to talk about, I have seen it before last year, but I watched it again recently for a specific reason. But it is an M. Night Shyamalan film. his no question his best film, even though I've barely seen any of his filmography. It's no question his best. 1999's The Sixth Sense, starring Bruce Willis and a 10-year-old Haley Joel Osment. In, for me, not just one of the best horror movies ever made, but one of the best movies, period. It's genuinely that good for me. So, for the 10 people who've never seen the film before, The Sixth Sense is about a child psychologist, Malcolm Crowe, played by Bruce Willis, and he is helping out this. He's trying to help out this kid, played by Cole, played by Haley Joel Osment, and who he can see. You know, the whole point is that he sees dead people, he sees ghosts, and Malcolm's trying to help him out, and he's trying to help Cole be able to connect more with his mother. Their relationship's kind of like fractured at this point, and he's just trying to help them get back together and just help him and whatnot. And I'm obviously not gonna spoil the twist because the reason I had to rewatch this film, it was actually for my film uni course. We actually have to do an assignment on The Sixth Sense, like an essay on it, and we watched it in the lecture theatre, and it was genuine because I've mentioned I've done like film classes before, like I did an A-level ranking of the films I watched for that.
Yeah.
And for me, watching The Sixth Sense with all these people, and some of them who've never seen it before, watching that was one of the best experiences that I've had watching a film with other people. Seeing like some of the nasty moments with some of the ghosts, because it's not like a scary film, but there's some jump scares and there's some like gross bits, like when the girl like vomits up sick and whatnot. That got a bit like, that's horrible. And then the twist, obviously, which I'm not going to spoil, but I was sat next to my friend who hadn't seen the film before, and just watching the cogs in her head turn on her face. You just see it, and she turns to me and like realizes, and she turns to me and she's like, "Wait, is that?" Yes, that's what happened, and it's absolutely brilliant. But the best part of the film for me is that yes, it's a great atmosphere. It's phenomenally put together, great cinematography, great editing, great production design, an amazing score. Like the music is beautiful. But the best part of the film is the emotional anchor to the film. Obviously, with Malcolm trying to connect more with his wife Anna, and obviously Cole trying to connect with his mother. And at the end, when that is resolved in both cases, I am just left bawling my eyes out. Genuinely, it absolutely just bawled my eyes out because it's just so. It is genuinely really beautiful. I want to do a full video on The Sixth Sense in some capacity. I really do, because I think it deserves it. But it's genuinely beautiful. And on this rewatch, I resonate a lot with a lot of this film, and no wonder it's one of the only horror movies to have ever got a Best Picture nomination. Like this, Get Out, The Exorcist, Jaws, The Silence of the Lambs. Very few horror movies get Best Picture nods. This did, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this film once. I was very young. I don't remember much of it. It was scary for me at that time. I think my age was still single digits, but
Bloody hell.
I still remember the twist so well because it was probably like the first instance of a good twist I'd ever seen. Because like when you're like a really young kid, you don't watch many films with like massive twists. Like you mostly watch kid films, but watching this film and like that ending, it's just like I've always remembered that, despite the fact that it's probably been like well over a decade since I saw it. But
definitely give it another go, because if you rewatch it like I had to this past week and whatnot, you will pick up on so much like foreshadowing. You will pick up on so many different new things. It's like, oh, that's why that's like that.
Yeah.
And, you get you pick up on so much.
Yeah, you'll be looking for the signs basically. Yeah.
You do, yeah, and it's so well like the clues are so well hidden and whatnot. But I forgot what I was going to say. No, I do remember. When you watch it, I think if you were to watch it as a kid, obviously I didn't watch it till I was last year and whatnot. But watching it at that young of an age, I imagine it would really kind of capture your imagination. Like, oh my god, it would really kind of blow your mind in that sort of way. That's kind of how I felt about some of the early horror movies that I saw, like The Shining and Nightmare on Elm Street. Those early horror films I watched when I was like 11, 12 years old. That they really captured your imagination. I imagine The Sixth Sense did the same for you.
I'd love to say I remember, but it was a long time ago. But
you still remember the twist, so that
I still
counts.
remember the twist. But it was definitely one of my first horror films. Like back then, I think my first horror film was either that or it was The Mummy, the good one.
Oh yeah,
the 1999 one, not the remake. But so we got one more movie left on this list. If you've been on listening to the podcast on Danny's channel, you'll know I've spoken about this movie before. It's I would like to regard it as one of my favorite Nick Cage horrors, if not my favorite Nick Cage horror. It is of course the infamous Willy's
Jesus
Wonderland, but most people will probably know this movie as that Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff, but it's an interesting film. It's like I figured I'd bring up a horror movie that's more of like a campy B movie kind of thing, because there's obviously that
That's fair
whole
enough,
type
yeah.
of horror that we've not even delved into today with what we've gone over so far. Because
Oh, trust me, I could bring up plenty of
Yeah.
campy 50s B movie horrors. I could bring up plenty, but
I mean,
I will shut up.
I enjoy like a good. I
Please
think
one plan.
there's a lot to enjoy about a campy B movie horror. When I was at Halloween Horror Nights at Florida, there was a house called there was a haunted house called Slaughter Cinema 2, and the idea of this house was that you go to this drive-in and you go into the house, and it's like 8 different mini B movie horrors within this house, and so every room you go into is like a new scene. So like you had things
Oh, man,
like
that's really cool.
the first one was like called the Mardi Gras murders, and there was just these like Mardi Gras jesters in there killing these people that were like a party, and then next thing and before each room is like a small hallway with like the poster for each movie, so you knew what was coming next, and so that was really cool. There was like there was one called like Heavy Metal Hell 3D, which had like these punk skeletons and whatever. There was Mummy Strippers Unwrapped, which is exactly what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
That made me with a good time.
There was Zyborgs, which was like zombie cyborgs. It was all sorts. There was this huge animatronic shark in this one called Blood and Chum. There was just like this massive like shark head coming out of a pipe. It was really cool. But it was like every room was like its own little like B movie, and it was really fun. So I think there is a lot to say for that kind of horror. That's like it's
no,
not
that's great, yeah.
scary, but like it's fun.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think there is To be fair, even some of like there's like a charm to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's even stuff like some of like the more quote unquote serious ones, like Final Destination we were talking about. That has a bit of a campy nature to some of it, whether it's intentional or not. I think there is definitely some enjoyment you can have in that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But yes, on Willy's Wonderland. So, for those who don't know, Willy's Wonderland is about a janitor who has to look after this old abandoned Chuck E. Cheese kind of place. But the animatronics come to life at night. I swear it's not a rip-off of Five Nights at Freddy's. But yes,
Sure it's not. Yeah.
It's been denied over and over that it's not, but I think we all know it kind of is. But it's
Sure, yeah.
it's weirdly, I actually liked it more than the Five Nights at Freddy's film. I thought the Five Nights at Freddy's film was really boring, in my opinion. I thought it was really slow. It wasn't scary. There was like minimal jump scares, and this is based off of a game series that prides itself on jump scares. So I think there
Even
was
with Matt Pat in it?
yeah, Matt Pat was in it. Yeah, he says that's just a theory, a food theory.
Could he not save the movie for you?
No, I mean at that point, like I wasn't really into FNAF at that point. I am now, obviously. I do my Five Guys at Freddy's every month. I'm doing one next weekend, and I'm really hyped for the second movie, which is apparently gonna be scary. I think Markiplier is gonna be in the second movie.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I think they
Seriously?
they were supposed to get him in the first movie as the guy who is in like the first scene of the film, but he was busy filming something else. Yeah, so Markiplier, I think he's going to be in the second film.
Jesus Christ.
I hope he's the guy who gets killed in the Bay of 87 just so that they play that one meme.
Mark. Markiplier.
Can't have it without the king of Five Nights at Freddy's, you know. But yes, I thought the first one was a bit boring, and Willy's Wonderland ended up being, when I rewatched it after watching Five Nights at Freddy's, it was everything I wish the Five Nights at Freddy's movie was. It was a really stupid kind of like a film with like these animatronics that come to life at night, while this guy Nicolas Cage, this mute janitor, is just trying to do his job, and every hour or so he just goes off, crushes a soda, plays some pinball, and then gets back to work to find that an animatronic has moved. But the difference between this and Five Nights at Freddy's is that Nick Cage actually fights the animatronics. So
Does he now?
the first one is this ostrich just kind of appears in front of him and he's like, oh, animatronic. He breaks his broomstick in half and starts battering this ostrich with broomstick. It's just so ridiculous. And then next thing you know, he goes into the bathrooms, he cleans the bathrooms, and there's just this giant green gorilla animatronic in the last stall that just starts attacking him.
I want to watch this now.
So he does what anyone would do in that situation, and gets out a plunger and starts attacking him with a plunger.
What is this, Mario now?
and like,
it's a me, Mario.
There are other characters in the movie, and some of them I add to the movie. Like there's the guy who like basically he drives into this town, his cars get a flat tire, and this guy says, "I'll fix your car up for free, but just do this job for one night at this place." So there's guys who add to the plot like that. There's like the sheriffs in the town that adds to the plot. There's also a bunch of teenagers in it that don't add too much to the plot, and I think take away from the film at times. But any scene with just Nicolas Cage and an animatronic is just way too fun. And one of the best scenes as well is there's a scene where an animatronic appears and Cage is there with a teenager, and his watch goes off for one of his breaks. So he just hands the knife to the teenager and just sods off. And and he goes back, he takes his drink, he plays some pinball, and he starts dancing to the pinball music while this kid's trying to fight an animatronic. It's just ridiculous.
He was so adamant on getting his like designated lunch break that he was
just adamant on having his power drink every fixed interval, that he just leaves the kid to defend himself and then comes back afterwards while playing pinball with the Willy's Wonderland music going. He just starts doing this improv dance. It's brilliant. Honestly,
I need to see some kind of edit of that where they just play like there's like some random song over that.
Honestly, I love this film. It's so stupid. It's like there's so many stupid things about it. I think it has actually quite a good explanation for the animatronics and everything that's actually not that ridiculous compared to where some of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore has gone to, because I don't know if you know anything about that series, but the lore nowadays is just absolutely ridiculous all over the place. Like, I don't think the guy who
not able to get into FNAF.
I don't think the guy who makes the games even knows the lore anymore. I don't think Scott knows anymore, because so much of it is just pieced together by fans. Like, he was recently asked in an interview what this locked box in the fourth game was, and his answer was basically, "I forgot." So no one really knows the lore, but I think this movie, Willy's Wonderland, had like an interesting idea behind the animatronics that wasn't just a carbon copy of Five Nights at Freddy's. It wasn't just we stuffed some kids in the suits and they're possessed now. It had its own kind of ideas as well, but obviously it took inspiration from Chuck E. Cheese. It took inspiration from FNAF. But I think overall it's a really fun movie. I mean, some FNAF fans obviously get a little bit irritated by the fact that it's kind of a copy, but I think it's a really fun movie, and I think it's definitely worth a watch if you like the more kind of silly B-movie horror kind of thing. I think Cage gives a really good performance despite not saying a single word throughout the entire movie.
That's impressive.
Somehow him not speaking is as unhinged as him in like Face Off almost. Not quite as unhinged. That's impressive. Not quite as unhinged as Face Off. That's another level. But it's a great film. It's one of my favourite Cage films. It's so wacky. I figured we'd tap into that side of horror as well. But that rounds it up for me on Willy's Wonderland. That absolutely insane movie.
That is a very interesting note to end on. Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland.
Because we've been recording now for about like 80 minutes.
Yeah, we're at 81 minutes now.
Hey, but you know what? It's a bumper episode. It's the Halloween special. We can run over. It doesn't matter. There's no fixed run time. We're not broadcasters. We're not scheduled. It doesn't matter. But I think that's all we covered. We covered a lot there.
Yeah, we covered quite a lot. Definitely more so in part 3 this time. Like, we don't normally talk about as many movies as we have in part 3 because there wasn't as much to talk about in part 1 this month. But true. I'm interested to see what happens for next month.
We may do with it, but
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that's the end of the podcast. And just before we end as well, I know on the day we're recording this, it's my buddy Jay. It's his birthday, and I know he listens to the podcast. So happy birthday, happy belated birthday for when this comes out, Jay.
Yeah, happy birthday, bro.
Happy birthday. But yeah, right, Mr. L, you do the outro. I'm gonna get a cup of tea.
Right. Yes. So thanks for watching and listening. We don't know necessarily what we're going to cover next month for Spotlight or for Part 1. I can't think of that many movies coming out soon, actually. But we'll
Yeah,
find
we'll
something.
decide. We'll think of something.
We'll find something. I think I'm going to watch a movie pretty soon. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, we'll find something. It might be a case of we could spotlight something like iconic from earlier in the year, from before we started the podcast, if need be. But
I potentially thought of an idea, perhaps because it's like towards the end of the year. Maybe kind of doing a roundup of like all that we've seen from 2024, maybe.
specifically that came out in 2024, or
Yeah, like films from 2024
okay,
that
yeah.
we've seen, like
Yes, we could do
what
things a
maybe like
bit.
we missed out on, and like maybe we could do that
Yes,
maybe,
we
and
could
then
do
I think December we
different
want to do
next
like
year. We
Sonic
could
3,
do.
don't we?
Yes, I think for part two we could probably do. We could probably do part two as like a recap of 2024's like biggest hits and flops and whatever. I think for part three, I want to go over that idea one of our commenters suggested a couple of episodes ago, back on the first one, of ranking the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I think that's quite a good shout. I think there's movies we've seen quite a bit. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd be down for that, to be fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be quite a quick part as well. Like, it's not going to be like an hour long part or anything. So that should be quite easy.
Yeah.
And then part one, we'll just see what comes out and what news comes out. But yeah, so I think that's good. So I think next time we'll cover over kind of the 2024 movies as like a retrospective, and then obviously we get onto
The
Christmas
tidbits from the
afterwards.
past year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good idea. So anyway, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give a like, comment your thoughts, comment anything you want us to cover. If we missed anything that came out this year that you enjoyed, because I'm sure there are things that flew under both of our radars. So if there's a movie that came out this year that you liked, let us know. We might look into it, we might discuss it, and we might give you a shout if it's a good comment. Let us know what you think of the format and everything. If there's anything you want us to do in future for part threes and whatever. And be sure to subscribe to Danny on DCS Media and myself too, if you don't mind. But
I recently hit 500 subscribers, which I'm very grateful for. So thank you.
yes, congrats.
So
Well
thank you.
done. Well done
And,
with 500. And yeah, thanks for watching. In terms of my stuff, just as a side note, I don't know if people who listen to this watch my other stuff. A new Five Guys at Freddy's is coming out soon. We're doing it at a different location. Mac fell through. And I'm going to have a vlog from Alton probably coming within a month. I've got another run there, so there's some stuff to look forward to. And then obviously we'll do another episode of this at the end of November, and we'll do one around December as well with probably a more Christmassy theme. So we've got some good content for you to look forward to coming up. So yeah, thanks for watching, listening, whichever really. And once again, really great to have Danny on the podcast again to discuss movies and our differing opinions.
Like each episode, it always tends to get better. Like I always feel more confident with each episode. It's just a blast to do.
Yeah,
really.
it's really nice. I really like that I like that we haven't really agreed on a lot of things with like the past two spotlights. Well, all three really, in a way. We've always got quite different opinions of the movies. And I like that we kind of, for our viewers and listeners, we bring both sides to the table here. So I think it's really
like
good
that,
dynamic we've got going here. But yeah, so thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to stick around next time. We're going to cover 2024. We're going to cover Guardians. We'll let you throw out some suggestions. Throw out some suggestions in the comment today of anything else you want us to go over next month, because we've really got no outline for this one. And yeah, so catch you in the next one.
Take care.
Bye.